Imagine watching a child being taunted and physically bullied because that child was different or strange. Should the child who is being bullied just sit back and try to talk to their attackers rationally as they're being beaten, bruised, and bashed to the ground? How effective would just words be in this type of a situation? Students aged 12 to 18 are victims of about 186,000 serious violent crimes at schools. This is one of the instances where violence would be the only way that the child could effectively defend themselves. There will always be those people who feel like violence can be prevented and should be prevented. Martin Luther King Jr. was a strong advocate of peace and using nonviolent methods. He even said we must not use violence. However, in some situations, sitting back and trying to speak calmly to an attacker can cause a person more harm physically and mentally than it would cause them relief. Violence is the answer in cases where a person is being threatened or doesn't feel safe. Frederick Douglass, the former slave, always struggled to feel safe. One day, he realized that enough was enough. He needed to defend himself from the harsh and cruel whippings that were given to him all too often. He said, "I resolved to fight, and suiting my action to the resolution, I seized Covey hard by the throat, and as I did so, I rose." Violence has a negative connotation because it is often used incorrectly. Violence is like a magnet. Sometimes the magnet attracts positive situations, and other times it attracts negative situations. This is why violence is the most effective when utilized in correct situations. Frederick Douglass knew that if he continued to sit back and allow his master to treat him poorly, he would never see a change. For Frederick Douglass, violence didn't change his life, violence saved his life. By using nonviolence, a person becomes a victim instead of a person who can effectively defend themselves. An example of this were the Selma to Montgomery marches in 1965. Although the people in the peace marches didn't use force to fight the police officers, that did not stop the police officers from using force on the marchers. Those people looked weak, which formed a target on their back. Those officers could smell the fear of the people marching, and they fed off of that. Many people who followed Luther's nonviolent approach felt like violence was evil. However, violence isn't evil, but it's the intent behind the violence that makes it evil. Children being bullied, a person being robbed, or a woman being abused all have the right to use violence as self-defense. Using a rational conversation to convince the attacker not to attack will not be effective. Instead of worrying about how bad and how evil violence is, it might be better to think about the most effective way to use violence as defense. Let's not ask what violence can do with a person. Let's ask what a person can do with violence.